Welcome to Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast.
My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
And my name is Dave Riedel, and that's a motorcycle outside my house. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and yeah.
Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom. Oh, my, I just thought of as those terrible, I think it was Toyota, the vroom, vroom, vroom ads from like 5 years ago or 10 years ago that made me want to like
poke your eye out, poke your ear out.
It made me want to throw something into a river. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, nothing will ever be as bad as the Cars for Kids ads. So
I've never seen one of those.
I've never seen one of those either, and I'm so glad.
It's a terrible earwormy song, but I will move on to say that we're here to talk about movies as we always do. But before we get to said movies, I want to mention that over on our Patreon this week, our Patreon exclusive audio, we talk about the 1985 film Daryl, the movie about the kid robot.
Yeah.
in case you weren't familiar with the movie. And first time watch for two of us, repeat viewing for one of us. We had a very fun conversation about the movie and some of its very interesting choices. So if you're a patron, check that out. If you're not, please consider joining. For $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes like that one. And you also get to vote in monthly polls. So definitely check that out. And while we're on the topic, I'd like to say thank you to our sponsor, Peace Patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you so much for supporting our show.
Thank
you, Heather. Jinx.
Now, moving on to the movies for this week. We have three we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about The Materialists, Best Wishes to All, and Echo Valley. And we're going to start with The Materialists, which Megan has seen. And I will just briefly mention it's written and directed by Celine Song, and it stars Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal as our kind of like three leads to the movie. I'll read the one sentence IMDb, and then I will let Megan take it away. And here's what IMDb says. A young, ambitious New York City matchmaker finds herself torn between the perfect match and her imperfect ex. Megan, how does that rate as a summary?
That's a perfect summary, and I think it came from the studio.
All right, there you go.
Which is why it's a good description. It's very, very succinct. Yeah, but no, that is exactly correct. This is one of my most anticipated films, or it was, of the year, because I was absolutely obsessed with Celine Song's first film, Past Lives. It is just a beautiful, gorgeous film that devastated me emotionally, and that just has so many nuances and subtleties. And it was a film I could not stop thinking about, that I rewatched and loved on rewatch. And so I saw this, and this is a very surprising film in certain ways, in a great way. It's being marketed kind of like a rom-com, and it starts off and kind of feels like a rom-com, like a very glossy New York film, kind of like with, peppy, upbeat music. Dakota Johnson is clad in gorgeous fashions. Like it has very much an old school Sex and the City vibe to it. And so it feels like it's going to be a slick, romance. And it is, but it's also very much an achingly bittersweet, tender, moving, and incredibly perceptive and shrewd commentary on dating and how people are looking for love, or how they value their worth and how they leverage that in dating. And it's just really fascinating to me. And so Dakota Johnson is a matchmaker, and she's an incredibly successful one. And she's just achieved a career milestone where she's had her 9th wedding from her couples that she set up. And she's at a wedding of one of her couples, and she meets the brother of the groom, who is Pedro Pascal, who is looking so debonair and so great. And I mean, of course, he's, Pedro Pascal is the best. He is the best as a human, and he's a great actor too. So he's extremely charming here. And he said that he was channeling like Cary Grant and Harrison Ford in Working Girl. And I'm like, yes, yes. Like, yeah. And so he's very suave, but he's also very honest, like refreshingly so. And he is immediately drawn to Lucy, and he overhears her giving her like spiel to other women about matchmaking. And she gives this really, I don't want to say idyllic description of it, because she's very level-headed about dating. And she talks a lot about how love is, or not love, but how she always says she knows nothing about love, but she knows everything about dating. And dating is math, and it's all about math. And the math needs to fit and needs to work. And so he overhears this and he's intrigued. They talk, they banter, and he wants to date her. She wants him as her client. And he's like, no, I want to date you. And while they're there at the wedding, Chris Evans shows up, and he's a waiter, and it's very clear her demeanor changes immediately when he enters the room in a great way. Like, she is absolutely delighted to see him, and like almost like she's a different person, and she's not kind of the slick, composed person she was. And so they dated years ago, like I think like 10 years earlier, but he was poor. He was broke. He's still broke. She was poor. They used to fight about money all the time. And she wants to marry someone rich because she's like, I don't want to be my parents. I don't want to just squabble about money all the time. And that just makes everything terrible. So she has in her head that she doesn't want to be bogged down by emotions. She wants to think about this very practically, because marriage is a business contract. And so she wants to be very practical. And so even though she loved Chris Evans a lot, his character, John, and he lives with two roommates, one of whom leaves used condoms on the floor in the kitchen because he doesn't want them in his bedroom. Yeah. And like, it's always chaotic in there. Like, even so much so that like the camera changes, like it's a handheld as opposed to like very smooth and gliding through the rest of the film. So yeah. So he's like, and he's, an aspiring actor. He's trying to make things work, but he's, paycheck to paycheck, and where she does not want that life anymore. And so Harry, who is Pedro Pascal, is in finance, and he makes a shitload of money. He has this immense penthouse, lives this lavish lifestyle where they go to these incredible restaurants, but they have these very frank conversations where she talks about the restaurants, and he's like, well, I want to take you somewhere romantic. And she's like, oh, do you assume that somewhere romantic is tied to how expensive it is? And he's like, well, isn't it? And so it's like these very frank conversations that I just found incredibly refreshing. And yeah, and so she is torn because on paper, Harry, Pedro Pascal, is the best. Like, he's great. And she calls him in the film a unicorn, which, as a queer person, I find hilarious because that has a very different connotation, of course, in a queer world. But the fact that he is so handsome, and he's tall, and he has a great job, and he's, nice, and like kind of all the perfect things that women are looking for that are, who date men. And then she has this very imperfect on paper love of her life, John. And so it is a love triangle, but in a very unconventional way. And it's just, I love that this film goes to different places than what you might expect. It subverts expectations in the sense that my best friend who came with me to see the movie, we always talk about how so often in romance films, people are made to be like the villain through cheating. And there's a part in the film where it seems like that might happen, but no, it doesn't happen, because she's dating Harry and she doesn't cheat on him. Nobody is cheating. Nobody is vilified. Nobody is made to be like, a scumbag. So, it's okay to go to this person instead. Everybody has their own life and their own agenda going on. And it's just really lovely. And I sobbed throughout this whole movie. Maybe not the whole movie, but a lot of the second half. And it's just really great. It's incredibly well directed. The cast is superb. I love Dakota Johnson. I know some people don't because I don't think they have watched the roles she's great in, or they think her acting is strange. I love her acting, but I think very much like Kristen Stewart, she's got a very particular style, and you're either in or you're not. But I think she's great here. I think she's very nuanced, kind of like in a Cha-Cha Real Smooth kind of way, like how she was
I was
great
just
in that
thinking of
movie.
that.
Yeah. I kept thinking of that movie, watching her here. Chris Evans is great. He was in, I can never think of the name of it. I think it's like Before I Go. It's a New York romance, and he's great in that. He's great here. And Pedro Pascal is the best. He is simply the best. He should do more romance because he is so lovely and just sexy and vulnerable and great, and I love him. And what I really like about this is I like what a smart film this is. And Celine Song was a matchmaker. That's partly why she was inspired to do this movie, because people are like revealing all of these like kind of awful things, but personal things. Like, and the movie goes there in kind of a sort of weird When Harry Met Sally way, where like people are like, no, I'm not going to date somebody who is, under 5'10", or I'm not going to date that person, or I'm not going to date, like, for these like absurd reasons.
Yeah.
Just absolutely absurd. And so I love that it's like exploring these, absurdities and looking at it in kind of like a marketing kind of business way, but also so it's kind of like a jaded, cynical way, but also very much a hopeful, love is beautiful kind of way. So yeah, so I thought this was spectacular. I loved it. And I love that Celine Song gives so much respect to love. Like she has said in interviews, like with the LA Times, she said that love is one of the most important themes in film, and we trivialize it. We think of war films as like super important, but we don't think of a love film as super important, and we should. And I really, really appreciate that. And I love that. And I love this film.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good movie. Do we think, I feel like Past Lives was a major awards contender, when it came out. Do we feel like this movie has enough oomph to be in the conversation?
I think it should, but I don't think it will, because I still think it is viewed as a rom-com. And no matter how good a rom-com is, no matter how sharp, how well acted, how well crafted, it's still seen as somehow lesser than. And so I don't think it will be in the same way Past Lives is, but I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it is. Who knows? Maybe the screenplay will be nominated,
true.
or there'll be awards talk about it. But yeah, but I think this is good enough where it could be in the conversation. I mean, it's still early. Obviously, we're only halfway through the year.
Right.
But yeah. Yeah, but I do. But I, and I think that's kind of what's really subversive and interesting about this film is it looks at, it's turning a very critical meta eye on itself too, because there's a scene where Lucy, Dakota Johnson's character, is very distraught because one of her clients goes on a date and she's sexually assaulted on this date, and it becomes a subplot, and it's handled very delicately and with a lot of care and thought. And she's, of course, distraught by this. And so she's talking to John, Chris Evans, about how she's upset. And she hasn't gotten into why, but she's just like, oh, one of my clients I'm really worried about. And he's like, oh, well, it's just dating. Don't worry about it. And she's like, oh, right, because it's just girl shit. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that's trivialized. And it's just, yeah. So I really appreciate that perspective.
Cool. I kind of want to see this now. I had forgotten. I had wanted to see this. I'd forgotten what it was called. So
I hope you see it and like it too.
The poster is very rom-com-y though.
It is. It is. I know. So that's what I mean. That's why it's like, it's not the movie you may think you're going to see. And it starts off very rom-com-y, like very much so. But yeah, but it changes, and I'm glad for it. Maybe not everybody will be, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say about Materialists?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So then let's talk about Best Wishes for All, which is a horror film. And it's directed and written by Yuta Shimotsu. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Also written by Rumi Kakuda. And this is a very vague one-sentence IMDb summary. A young woman navigates a discovery within her immediate family only to find out much more. Yikes, that is incredibly vague.
That is underselling it.
Wow.
Here's a slightly longer summary that's also on IMDb in the storyline section. A young nursing school student visits her grandparents in the countryside. They enjoy a reunion while she feels increasingly uncomfortable. There's something in the grandparents' house. One day she finds out the truth that turns her, quote, happy daily life into horror. That's slightly better. But yeah, this is a Japanese film. It's a horror film. Yeah, our main character, we see her in the very beginning of the film where she's like a kid and she's eating dinner with her grandparents and her parents, and they are asking her like, oh, are you happy? And she's like, yeah, I'm happy. And this is a question that comes up a bunch later in the movie. Like, are you happy? Like they ask her pointedly. She's like, in college now. She's studying nursing. She's kind of prepping for her like licensing exams. And she's coming back to visit her grandparents, but her parents aren't there first. Like her parents and her like younger brother, like he's sick or something. So she's like, oh God, I gotta go by myself. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Also, we had seen in the beginning when she was a kid, there was like this weird situation where she like woke up in the middle of the night to like use the bathroom and heard this like weird like banging upstairs in this like room at the end of the hall, and she like peeked her head through like an open door and saw this like really it's a very like you only kind of see through the slit of the door that like something or someone is on the other side of the door looking very creepy. So like she's an adult, she's going to visit now, and her grandparents just acting fucking weird. Like
Yeah.
really, really weird. Like staring off into like the distance, like standing in the middle of the hallway. Her grandpa's like just staring straight ahead with his mouth agape. I'm just trying to think of other like weird stuff that they do. They have
they
some
make
like
pig noises.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They feed her some pork, and then they start making the pig noises. And it at first she thinks they're joking, but they're like being serious. And they're like, the pig was grateful to be eaten or something like that. And she's like, oh, what? They're just acting fucking weird. And like they've got this whole big like vat of like miso. They're like, we make our own miso, and she's like scooping from this like almost looks like an urn to put it in their food. And yeah, then she like in the middle of the night hears like the banging from the door, but the door is locked, and her grandmother comes up the stairs and comes like running into the door and keeps like running into the door repeatedly. And like I don't remember how that scene resolves itself. I think she just wakes up the next day like, the fuck just happened last night. And she's there. She like reconnects with like an old, friend who still lives in the area, and he's taking over like his dad's farm, and they hang out. And then later she tells her grandparents, and they're like, yeah, don't hang out with that guy. And she's like, why? And they're like, just don't. He's whatever. So she eventually finds out that there is a person in that room by the fact that she's sitting there with their grandparents at the table, and there's this weird person crawling across the hallway, and they just get up and start dragging him by the feet back to the room. And you find out that he's been like chained up in there, and he has these like weird, I don't know, like bandages on him, and that they keep him like chained up in the room because they need to for their own happiness. Like he's basically like suffers so that they don't have to suffer, kind of a situation. And she's like really not on board with this. She's like, what the hell? This is fucked up. We need to like do something about this. And they're like, no, we're not gonna. Like, you're on board with this. Trust me, you benefit from this. Like, if we don't have this guy, we'll start like convulsing and bleeding and probably die if we don't have this guy like chained up in our weird attic room. And so like the rest of the movie is like her kind of grappling with this, like, what the hell do I do? Because then, yeah, like her brother starts like bleeding from the eyeballs, like, and all kind of people start like convulsing and laughing. And it's like, oh crap, maybe we do need this guy. But then the guy ends up dying, and the grandparents like burn his like body in the middle of the field while like the neighbors are watching, because like apparently all the neighbors know about this too, and they have their own people that they keep locked up. Except her friend doesn't do that. He's not. He doesn't believe in that, I guess. Somehow he's not bleeding from the eyeballs. And then, yeah, what ends up happening is that she is kind of like getting down to the wire. It seems like if they don't replace that guy, they're all gonna die. So she like starts trying to like. Oh, and also I should mention that this guy had his like eyeballs and mouth sewed shut. So she starts trying to like sew her own eyeballs shut and like can't do it. And her family. Like her family doesn't keep going, which I thought that they would. I thought they would just be like, okay, fine, if you don't want to be on board this plan, we'll just use you for this. But then she ends up going to see her friend, who's was it his dad dies, and then he's like, he grabs her hand and is like basically trying to make her strangle him to death. And then like he ends up becoming the person that they like, chain up and use for their family. And that's kind of like end of the movie, I think. Am I missing stuff? It's been a few days since I've seen this. So I'm doing my best from memory to remember like all the stuff that happened.
You're missing this prologue and epilogue. At the first scene of the movie is her helping an elderly woman across the street.
That's right.
And then the second to last scene of the movie is her like looking at this. It's the same woman, and she's looking at her just being like, because now she's got her happiness. So fuck the old lady. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's like she that's right. She moved back to the city. She's got a guy that she's like seeing now, and seems like, yeah, everything is going great for her. And she's like, yeah, okay, I don't even need to engage that lady anymore.
Yeah,
I don't need to help other people. I'm set.
Oh, and he's a doctor too, because she says something like, oh, are you still really tired? And he's like, no, my surgery got pushed back to next week. It's like, you're only doing one surgery a week. What's wrong with you? But and then when they're going to meet his parents, I guess, he's like, you look really happy. And then she's like, got that weird smile. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That
So, Dave, you texted us in the middle of watching this. You said something effective. I don't know what the fuck I'm watching right now. So I'm very eager to hear what you think about this movie.
Yeah. So what I had sent to you both, and that's pretty much it, Evan. Currently watching Best Wishes to All, and I am not sure WTF I am watching. I mean,
did you figure out WTF you were watching?
Yeah. I mean, I think this movie makes the mistake of tipping its hand too soon. Because then I was just waiting for her to use her friend as the body in the secret room or whatever. Cause I was just like, well, that's what's going to happen. It's either going to be her. And I didn't really buy that because like in movies like this, the heroine or hero always, ends up siding with the baddies. Or, gets killed by the baddies, I guess, which would basically be the equivalent here. But anyway, I was just kind of waiting around for it. The things that I found most interesting, though, were before she really knows what's going on, like when she tries to find her aunt and ends up splitting that woman's head.
Oh, my God.
But that she had a happiness thing, too, and her person was like chained up and had been there so long it was decayed. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, that was pretty gruesome part of the movie.
But I think the really fucked up thing about that is the fact that the aunt left when she was like in her early 20s to get away from all of this nonsense and then ends up becoming exactly like them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the irony was lost on the aunt, but
I think so.
Because she had clearly like lost her marbles.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, this kind of worked for me. Like some of the slow burn worked for me, but it also kind of didn't. I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. I think, like I said, I think it just tipped its hand too early because it's like you see the guy crawling across the floor, and then I just spent the rest of the movie basically waiting for her to decide whether she was going to like. I didn't know, obviously, from the moment you see him that was, when she sees him on the side of the road, that was what was going to happen. But, once grandpa's like, stay away from that boy. And then you find out the thing about the person in the attic or the back room or wherever it is. I'm pretty sure he's upstairs. So let's call it an attic.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, let's speed this along because I know where it's going to go. And then that's where it went. And I just wasn't really surprised by anything, even though some of the imagery is kind of gross. And I'm still not sure why grandma was pregnant, but
yeah, that's right. We didn't even bring that up. And she gives birth like in the kind of like height of all of this insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a communal type pregnancy, very feeling like midsummery in a way.
She's like laying on the backs of like her mom and dad giving birth. It's a very odd scene.
Mm-hmm.
And also everyone seems to be unconcerned that her brother's eyes are bleeding and then like something is oozing out of them later. I don't know.
Yeah,
Dave, you knew there would be eye stuff in this.
Yeah.
What's that?
But it means they gotta eat.
That's true.
They gotta get the body.
Yeah.
And then they gotta eat or whatever they do with the bodies.
Yeah. I don't know. I just wasn't really. I kind of liked the lead performance because, she's got this look in her face the whole time, like, Jesus Christ, like the whole movie.
I liked her too. She's like, what is happening?
I know. I really sort of appreciated that. Even though I kind of knew where it was going, I liked that her character just refused to believe what was happening around her for the longest time. And I just sort of appreciated that she was just in the middle of all this chaos and she decided, I didn't appreciate that she decided to like use her friend as whatever, but he kind of made that choice too. He's like, well, my dad's dead. You may as well strangle me until I lose consciousness. And then you can drag me to your grandparents' house and then you can all be happy and I'll serve a purpose. It's like, is working on the farm really that bad? I mean,
yeah, I mean, he was a pretty talented artist too. Remember, his dad was like, "You should go move to the city and like forget about all this shit. Just like leave me behind and go live your life."
Yeah. And are we meant to believe that this is happening all over Japan? Because when she goes to meet her boyfriend's parents, there's somebody who clearly has that going on upstairs in Tokyo. So, is it not just the farming community? I mean, what would have happened if she moved to the city by herself?
Right. And what about the people who just don't do this? Like, that's the part. Like, how is like that work? That's the part that's one part that was very confusing to me.
Yeah. So,
I'm still not entirely sure what they did with the bodies. Did they were they cannibalistic and making the miso? Like, what is happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was confusing too. And were those like parts of the bandages, like parts where they like cut off parts of his skin and were like eating him? Was that the pork?
Right. Or are they draining his blood and putting the blood in the miso? And that's why it was so red, like according to the brother? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's one. I mean, so we've talked about this before on the show. Like sometimes it's really great when a movie is kind of murky and vague about the mythology, and that can be scary on its own. But then other times it's just you end up sitting there thinking about the movie too much of like, well, how does this add up? It doesn't make sense. And I feel like it's more the latter for me watching this movie. I feel like there are definitely things that just didn't make sense. And then I was just sitting there like scratching my head for parts of the movie.
Yeah, I do wonder if this, because it's a Japanese film, does this resonate more with a Japanese audience? Because like, are a lot of these things kind of like cultural mythologies or superstitions or traditions or something that, things that wouldn't need to be explained to a Japanese audience perhaps, but to perhaps other countries' audiences would. And so for us, it's like, what the fuck? What did I just say? Or is it just murky because the filmmaking is murky,
Yeah. Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's what I kept. It's interesting that you said, Dave, though, that it tipped its hand too early and you knew exactly where it was going to go. I didn't, and I'm still not sure exactly where it went, just because I'm thinking of like the weird logistics of like, were they vampires? Were they cannibals? What is happening?
Yeah.
What was the finger sucking
The finger
all
sucking.
about?
What was that? And did
Right?
Grandma
Oh my
see her
God.
under the table? Because it seemed
It
like she
looked
did.
like it.
She
right.
definitely did. She definitely
Right.
saw her. The grandparents, yeah, they're like sucking each other's fingers, and the grandmother sees her under the table, just like looks at her and goes about her business.
But they
And then-
also sucked her fingers too, and she's like, "What are you doing? Stop it!" And like,
Mhm. And also,
so
why
weird.
didn't they tell her? Everybody else knows. Why didn't they tell
Right.
her?
And they keep saying, "Oh, we got to tell you. We got to tell you. We're going to tell you. Maybe we waited too
we
long
waited
to tell
too
you."
long to tell you. Yeah.
And they still didn't tell her, really.
Yeah, she found out on her own, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I feel like I need to know all the rules and the parameters. What's going on?
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, but I liked this, even though I kept thinking about like what's exactly going on. I think because of the foreboding atmosphere, it was and like the creepy score and the lead performance. I did really like this, but I'm also like, I'm not sure what the fuck was happening.
Mm. Yeah.
I hear that.
Oh, yeah. I like that you both, when I sent you that text earlier today, you were both like, ha, 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 in your answers to me.
Yeah, basically, because I was just thinking, if you're already thinking what the fuck, just keep watching the movie, because you're just gonna keep thinking that over and over again.
Yeah, I really did. Also, there was one, I don't really want to point this out, but I kind of have to point it out. When they rescue, let's put that in air quotes, when they rescue the old man from upstairs and he's like walking down the road, first of all, they're just like following him. Like, what? I don't, why are you just following him? Like, the farm kid has a truck. Like, take him to the fucking ER. Like, what's going on here? Because, he just exists to get killed by someone on the road.
Yes.
Because there was
yes.
already like I wouldn't say the kid who fell off his bike had a near death experience, but that's it. It could have been that way. Anyway, when the old man does get hit by the car, it is some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. It looks like a stuffed animal flying through the air.
It's true. Yeah, the physics of it were very bizarre.
Yeah. And I just kept thinking about how, and I can't believe I remember this, that Mike Judge said in the Beavis and Butthead movie that they made like in the middle 90s, whenever that was, that the sequence they spent the most time on was the one where Beavis and Butthead jump out of the trunk because they were worried that it wouldn't look realistic if they didn't have the bodies rolling at the correct speed for the speed the car was going. And I just thought to myself, no one in this movie saw Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Dave, I love Beavis and Butthead when I watched it on MTV many moons ago, but you just spoiler pieced me into watching the movie.
Yeah, I remember that as clear as day. Mike Judge being like,
incredible.
yeah, and then we had to think about like, what would the physics of that be like? Like, what does a body moving at 70 miles per hour because it was in the car look like when it hits the pavement and the pavement's going 0 miles per hour? I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe that this much thought went into Beavis and Butthead.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So nobody thought about that is what I'm saying, everybody.
No. And we talked a few weeks before, or maybe it was a month ago, whenever it was, about Sister Midnight and kind of the very cheesy special effects. And partly, of course, it's the budget, but also partly that's very much an intentional choice. This is not that movie. This is not a campy movie where you could get away with that.
No, it's playing it straight.
Yeah.
It is not, like you said, being campy.
Yeah. I will say the eye stuff was effective for me, though. It was really gross.
Pretty gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was gross.
Like
that
when
was,
she starts sewing.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. Ugh.
Which also happens in The Ugly Stepsister, too. And it's the grossest scene I've seen this year.
Oh,
so this reminded me of that.
Sewn shut?
Not eyes being sewn shut, but fake eyelashes being sewn into the flesh of the eyelid.
Ugh.
Oh my God.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I mean,
gnarly.
yeah, same principle, I guess. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow it's more brutal and grosser in The Ugly Stepsister, though. But yes, I was like, oh, that reminds me of that terrible scene. Not terrible as in it was badly done, but terrible as in like, bleh.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy.
Mhm.
Oh, the movies we've chosen this week.
I was like, glad to put
Yeah.
that image in your head.
Well, boy, yeah. I feel like I was enjoying the movie at the start. For similar reasons that you mentioned, Megan. About I really was liking the score. I liked the
Mhm.
atmosphere, the forebodingness of it. It really had my attention, and then I just feel like it just took way too long to like, even though, like you said, Dave, it plays this hand early about what's going on. I just felt like it was just so slow for me to get to like the good stuff. And a lot of it, I just was saying similarly, what the fuck am I watching throughout the movie? Like, what is this? What's going on? These are odd choices, and it's not keeping my attention. By the end, I was just kind of like, oh, thank God it's over.
Yeah. I kept thinking like this sort of reminds me in a way of The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. It's like you just get like
Yes.
one person gets picked and then they got to go in the attic,
Oh,
instead of
man,
getting
The Lottery's
stoned to
so
death,
good.
So, and it does seem to be like that too, because it's like they're just letting their son die on the floor while his eyes bleed out and like no one gives a shit. And, the convulsing is beginning. Like, why does it start with the youngest one first? I don't.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Also, something weird too is when the protagonist is like really upset about the guy being hit by the car, and her mom's like laughing, and she's like, I can't believe you saw him as a human. And it's like, oh my God, like the dehumanization and objectification
Mhm.
going on here is wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, I was like, is that a commentary? I mean, it is obviously a commentary on our society or Japanese society or all societies. But I was also linking it to the whole pig conversation, like the pig noises.
Mm.
And when the protagonist is talking, and then the grandmother's like, well, pigs are just made to be slaughtered. And the protagonist is like, I don't think so. And she's like, don't be so naive. They're raised in these tiny pens and we're eating them now. And then the granddaughter is like, oh, so I guess we should be grateful for them. So, but it was like, I don't know.
Yeah. But then doesn't her grandmother say like, why would you be grateful for them or something? Or am I making that up? I don't know.
I don't know, but she definitely has that attitude. I don't know if she actually verbalizes that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Megan, you mentioned before the movie Midsummer,
Yes.
and that definitely came up after Shauna and I finished watching it, because she was feeling like when you watch Midsummer, you feel like you see Florence Pugh's kind of like transition from being like an outsider to an insider, and it feels like it makes sense how she kind of joins this community and like the reasons that kind of put that together.
Totally.
And she was just mentioning that she didn't, and I agreed with her, that I feel like that one of the flaws of this movie for me was that I don't think they did an effective enough job convincing us as to why she switched sides, like what all went through her mind that she was like, okay, now like I'm on board with this plan now. It just felt very sudden that she was all of a sudden like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think you're both absolutely right, because she talks to that kid who's like, yeah, I'm happy now. I guess I'm not going to resist it anymore. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're going to listen to some kid? Like you're going to trade in your humanity and forget all about, dehumanizing another person and being cruel just to do this? Like you're right. It just doesn't make sense unless she just feels like, well, this is inescapable. Like it's just inevitable. So I might as well embrace it. But yeah, but so I don't know, maybe that's what the message is, but I do agree with you that it doesn't have that same rationale. Like it doesn't have that same emotional logic.
Yeah. And I also got the feeling that, maybe her life wasn't miserable, even though she didn't know about this. It seems like the rewards for her also weren't great enough to make this sort of sacrifice of your conscience. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, she hadn't known about it, but she had benefited from it, which her grandparents did say. But at the same time, there's no resolution to that. It's kind of just like brought up and then dropped.
Right.
So, and also you're going to have to like eat your would-be boyfriend is miso. I mean, come on. That's fucking unpleasant.
So weird.
Yeah.
Actually, I like
That
the
was-
weirdness of that, but anyway.
Well, nothing is quite as weird as a rabbit nursing from a human woman, which this movie does not have. So just going to throw that out
No,
there.
it
We're going.
doesn't.
Oh, that's true. That wasn't a movie we saw earlier this year.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I'm just
That
every
seems
time
like
we talk
ages
about.
ago.
Yeah, I know. Every time we talk about something weird, I'm going to talk about the weird tree demon movie with the rabbit and that bizarre movie that wasn't any good, even though it had some really fucked up shit in it that should have worked.
True.
I mean, you ever going to forget a rabbit nursing on a human? I mean, I'm not.
No, but it reminds me of the rehearsal because an enormous paper mache puppet nurses a baby Nathan Fillion in the latest season of the rehearsal. And it is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Is The Rookie still a show? Is that still a show? Or is that over? That's
Maybe?
Nathan Fillion too. So.
No, I'm sorry. Did I say Nathan Fillion? I meant Nathan Fielder.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I think I did
Oh,
say Nathan Fillion. I meant Nathan
Yeah.
Fielder.
Yeah, now it makes more sense.
It makes way more
Yes.
sense.
I was like, Nathan Fillion did that?
Yeah,
What?
no, sorry.
Long way from Firefly there, Nathan.
Right?
Jeez.
Yes.
No,
For
Nathan
sure.
Fielder.
Yeah. It would just say Nathan Fielder. I'm like, oh, sure.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talked about the rabbit nursing, I immediately thought of the giant puppet nursing. It's so weird.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we should move on to Echo Valley, our last movie of the
Sure.
of the show. Okay, so Echo Valley. It is directed by Michael Pierce, written by Brad Inglesby, stars Julianne Moore, Sydney Sweeney, Domhnall Gleeson, Fiona Shaw, and I feel like and Kyle MacLachlan in a kind of like small part. And so here's our IMDb summary. We've got Kate is dealing with a personal tragedy while owning and training horses in Echo Valley, an isolated and picturesque place, when her daughter Claire arrives at her doorstep, frightened, trembling, and covered in someone else's blood.
It's not covered in it. I mean,
No, there's just some small amount
there's
of
a
blood.
spattering.
Yeah. Spattering, yes. Let's see. So to expand on that a little more, we have Julianne Moore. Kate, she has lost her wife a little less than a year ago. Her daughter Claire is, to call her ne'er-do-well would be an understatement. She's struggled with drug addiction and has been in and out of rehab, and you find out fairly early in the movie that from Kyle MacLachlan, who is her ex-husband and Claire's father, that she's put them through a lot. He feels that Kate has been enabling her, just constantly like giving her money and just to her own detriment. Like you find out in the beginning of the movie that she's like broke and she needs to go to Kyle MacLachlan to like get any kind of money to like try and hang on to this farm, and he gives her $9,000 for a new roof for their barn at the farm, but he's kind of like, you need to figure this shit out. Like, I can't keep bankrolling this place if it's not bringing any money in. And yeah, then Claire shows up, and well, the first time we see her, it's kind of like an innocuous interaction. She's kind of like, oh, she's home. But then she's like, oh, can I use your iPad? I need a new phone. She's like, what? We just got you a new phone. Like, oh, please take me to get a new phone. And they kind of get the phone, and they're having a nice time. They go like swimming. And then what happens? She disappears, right?
Mm-hmm.
She disappears, and then she comes back, so she mentions that like she doesn't have a phone because her idiot boyfriend Ryan like
Oh, right.
threw it in the ocean or some shit like that, and he sounds like an abusive, shitty dude. So then like he shows up at their house, and he's like all beaten up, and he's like, Claire, you threw away all my stuff, and my, there was money, or there was drugs in there from Jackie, who's Domhnall Gleeson, their like drug dealer, and he's gonna, kill me if I don't get the money to him. And so then they like leave, and they're like, oh, we're gonna like disappear for a couple days and go camping. And then Claire comes back, and she's got the blood on her, and she's like, yeah, me and Ryan got into a fight, and I killed him. Kate's like, oh shit, okay, what? Tell me more. She's like, I hit him with a rock, and like I got his body out in the car. And so she like finds the body, which by the way is all like neatly wrapped up in like a sheet and everything, and all like tied
Way
up and
too
basically,
neatly.
yeah, ready
Here-
to fucking go.
Here is my one note that I took, which is resolved. I just banged something. That was what that noise was. I wrote, she wrapped up his body and put it in the car. How? And then it's because, you know, she said she killed Ryan, but it's because Ryan helped her put the body in the car, because it's not really Ryan. Sorry.
Right,
Spoiler.
yeah, you find it. Yeah, well, first of all, you start with the fact that Kate takes the body and disposes of it. She like brings it to a lake and, you know, ties it up with a cinder block and drops it in the lake, and, you know, disposes of all the evidence, like burns their clothes, cleans the car, and then Claire, you know, she tells Claire what happened the next day, and Claire kind of seems like shocked that her mom like went and did this, and she's kind of like, oh, I didn't ask you to do this. And she's like, but didn't you? Basically, like, did you like need me to take care of this shit? And I took care of it. So like, we need to come up with a story. We need to like, in case anybody asks about Ryan, we need to, you know, we got rid of his phone, et cetera, et cetera. And then Claire fucking disappears on her again, and she's like trying to find her. Meanwhile, somewhere in there, Fiona Shaw, who's like her friend. And by the way, I keep just seeing Fiona Shaw in literally everything. Like, I
'Cause
cannot
she
avoid
is,
her.
and she's
She's
the
in
best.
everything.
She's so
She's
good.
everywhere. She shows up. She's an old friend, and she's like there to like help her out on the farm with the horses and to be there for her. And they get drunk and have a good time. And let's see what happens. So after that, she's like, I gotta find out what the hell Claire is doing. So she manages to use like the Find My iPhone to track her down, and she finds out that, yeah, as you guys mentioned, that Ryan is not in fact dead, and that she and Ryan are, you know, strung out. And turns out that there was some kid that like OD'd, and he died. And then Claire was like, well, I could get my mom to take care of this. I could totally like manipulate her into doing this. And she did. And Jackie is a drug dealer. He knows about this, and so he shows up later to blackmail Kate, and is like, I know what you did, and you're fucked, and you basically need to give me a bunch of money because I want to disappear and lay low for a while. And so he like drugs her and essentially is there like threatening her until he is going to get the money. And she comes up with this plan that she's going to burn her barn down for insurance money. And he's like, no way, this is a terrible idea. It's going to take way too long to get the money. And she somehow convinces him like, yeah, I'll make you an employee of the farm, and I'll you know, pay you in installments so you can basically like launder the money easier. And he's like, all right. And then she told Fiona Shaw at some point what was going on with Claire.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, so she decides to set the fire, and Domhnall Gleeson stays there just long enough to watch her set the fire and then takes off. And then the fire happens, and then, you know, the police find the flare that was used to set the fire, because she came up with this plan because Fiona Shaw told her about some guy who got caught setting fire to his barn for insurance money. And then it turns out that she, you know, laid a trail basically to point it all back to Domhnall Gleeson. She went and got the body of the kid from the lake, put it in the barn, you know, said he was staying there. There was a witness who saw him on the property. There's, you know, a paper trail now that he had money that got transferred into his account, et cetera, et cetera. And so the movie kind of ends with like him taking the rap for everything. And then Claire showing up again on her mom's doorstep in like a moment where they're just kind of like looking at each other, and you're not really sure whether Claire is going to like, or whether Kate is going to let her in or talk to her or what, or if she's kind of like, whatever, fucking, I'm done with this. So I'm sure I left something out, but what did I miss in there?
No, I think you hit the major beats. One thing that we should mention is that Domhnall Gleeson showed up once before all the crazy shit went down to threaten Sydney Sweeney.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly where the real threats end and the plot to screw Kate over begins.
Mhm.
And I like how that whoever wrote this, I read it was the mayor of Easttown person.
It sure is.
Whoever wrote this was smart enough to have Donald Gleason say later in the movies, like, Claire said you do all this. I can't believe you actually did it, though, because it is as implausible as all fucking hell. But I don't know. Megan, what did you think?
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's whatever. I was really excited to see this because, Julianne Moore's a great actor. Sydney Sweeney's usually really great. I loved Mare of Easttown. Kate Winslet gives a phenomenal performance in that. And I was going to say it's a fun mystery. That's the wrong term because it's like about women dead. Like that's not fun. But it is a good mystery. It's an enjoyable series. It's grim. Mostly it's really good for Kate Winslet's performance. So yeah, but this is utterly ludicrous and very unbelievable.
It's pretty bonkers.
Yeah, and it really tests the bounds of disbelief and belief. I more had, and I want to say this up front, all the animals are fine, but one of the most disturbing scenes in the film to me is when Claire is high and tries to bribe her mother to give her money by threatening to take the dog and then leave the dog. And then Kate goes around like a side door of the bedroom and gets the dog and is shielding the dog with her body as Claire is trying to steal the dog and is screaming at her. It is
and biting
effective.
Her hand.
Bites her
yes,
mother.
Biting her hand. It is very effective in how disturbing it is. But then I don't know if I needed not immediately, but I don't know if I needed in the same film then the threat of the burning of horses where Jackie, Domhnall Gleeson, is like, well, which horses do you own? And she's like, well, I only own 2. And he's like, well, burn them. And then she's like, she's about to say something. And he's like, no, don't be stupid. We have to burn them all. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And I know this movie's not going to do that, but I'm just like, oh my God, like we already know Jackie's a scumbag. Do we really need threat of burning horses and, abandoning dog? Anyway, so that's a lot of what I was thinking about while watching this. And also I was like, wow, Sydney Sweeney is really fucking annoying in this. But that's of course the point. She's supposed to be really screechy. She's supposed to be really obnoxious and really frustrating as someone who is, dealing with addiction. And Kate is very much an enabler and just keeps, bailing her out and giving her money. And so it's a frustrating watch. I feel like on multiple fronts, but then I read part of a review that David Ehrlich did at IndieWire where he talks about like the first half of the movie, it then morphs into a different movie. And I very much agree with that. And I think I like that movie more, the like ridiculous, absurd mystery rather than the melodrama that's happening up front. Yeah, I do think there's some moments that I found kind of interesting. Like I like that Kate is a queer woman and it's sad that her wife died and that her wife died in a horse freak accident when the like tractor backfired and the horse threw her and she broke her neck and she's like full of grief and she can't get over that. I like that that we see the tight friendship with Jessie, Fiona Shaw, and how she's a lesbian. So we have that, kind of queer community going on there. That's nice. And Fiona Shaw, I love her. She's great in everything. I love seeing her in Andor, love seeing her in True Blood, loved seeing her in Killing Eve, love seeing her in movies. She's great. So I was very happy about that. But yeah, I don't know. This movie's kind of disjointed. And I was just like, yeah, okay, it's fine. So overall, my opinion is, yeah, I had some issues. I liked some things. It's very, very preposterous and implausible, but overall, yeah, it's fine. So I feel like all over the place, kind of like the way this movie is.
Yeah, it definitely is all over the place. I think I was initially enjoying it. I thought the score was really great. I thought the movie was very tense, and it it got very tense in the scene that you were mentioning about the dog. It was very difficult to watch. It was so tough and just so heartbreaking and infuriating and all the things that you should be feeling in that scene. So it was very effective in that scene.
Yes.
And then you're right, it does become a very preposterous mystery, and that part I think is ultimately more interesting, engaging. I don't feel good saying fun because I don't think the movie is fun. I felt like I survived this movie by the time I finished it, and I think a lot of that has to do with what you were mentioning about the burning barn and the horses, and them doing something that, to borrow a word that I know you like to use, Dave, cheap, where they have her set the fire and you hear the horses in the barn and you're basically led to believe that the horses are burning to death. And I have a very hard time with that. The fact that the movie even lets you think that or is willing to let you think that for a second, especially because she does say to Domhnall Gleeson, like, yeah, I've got 2 horses, but this is a boarding place. I've got other horses here. And he's like, you said, burn them all. But like later when they rewind and show you that she's like plotted all this stuff so that, she could point the finger at him, we see her let 2 horses out, like her horses, but it's like, there weren't other horses in there, right? Was she lying to him that there were other horses there? Like, it's just weird that they don't really close the loop on that. And so I just had such a bad taste in my mouth from that I couldn't really appreciate the rest of the movie or even what was going. I finished it and thought, I'm so glad this is over. And I'm so mad at this movie for making me suffer through that whole ordeal, in addition to I'm going to kidnap the dog and I'm really willing to bite your hand off just to get the dog so I can take the dog away from you. That too.
I see.
But I did like Julianne Moore. I did like Sydney Sweeney. I liked Domhnall Gleeson. He's very good. Creepy and very menacing.
Yep. Agreed.
Very effective performance.
Yeah, I agree with literally everything you just said, Evan. All of it.
Glad we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Dave, what did you think?
I don't think I'm on the same page about our friend Mr. Gleeson.
No?
Oh.
Yeah, I found him a little corny.
Oh, interesting.
Probably because in real life he's a string bean, and he is here too. So he just doesn't present as menacing to me. And I always just think of him as the guy who stands inside of a closet and closes his eyes, and then he can travel in time and meet, Rachel McAdams whenever he wants to.
Sorry, I'm not an About Time fan.
Neither am I. It's a fucking terrible movie.
Oh, thank God. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't like it.
Well, you know what it is? You start to see all of, like, the more Richard Curtis movies you watch, the more you see how limited he is as a writer and how he falls back on his own tropes that he's invented. And they're shitty tropes. They're shitty misogynistic tropes.
Yes.
Anyway.
Although I do like Love Actually, despite my better judgment. Anyway, but we're not talking about those movies.
Right, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Mayor of Easttown or whatever this is called. So I was sort of, now I swear I don't always see everything coming. But now, and I didn't see it coming like miles away. It was just when Julianne Moore lit the fire with the whatever, I'm like, oh, she's going to frame Jackie. Yes. I didn't know how she was going to frame him. And then I was like, then I actually had the thought, I'm like, are we going to get that thing that they do where they show you afterward what happened? And then they did, which is always disappointing to me, because I always think, and I think I'm right, if it's a good plot thread, then you can just show the audience what's going on beforehand, and then they'll just root along with your protagonist to get away with it. But whatever. Yeah. So, Julianne Moore's good. Sydney Sweeney, who I'm not a fan of, is very good. I thought this movie was going to be like when Julianne Moore takes the body and takes it out to the lake and whatever weights it down. I thought this was going to be that movie. You remember Before and After with Liam Neeson and Meryl Streep? where Edward Furlong like kills his girlfriend and Meryl Streep. His parents
I
are
don't remember this movie, but
No.
his
now I
parents.
need to
His
watch
parents
it.
are Meryl
right?
Streep and Liam Neeson, and Meryl
I
I mean,
Streep's
what
like,
a pair.
yeah,
Right?
Meryl Streep's like, we got to go to the cops, and Liam Neeson's like, oh, I'll take care of it, and then he goes and like disposes
care
of the
of it.
girlfriend's body, and the whole movie is them like trying not to get caught. I thought
He
that's
didn't
what it
have
was
his
going to be.
particular set of
I
skills yet.
just was gonna say
Yeah.
that.
He didn't. His skills. He worked on his skills, I guess, while he was inside after the end of that movie.
I need to see this movie now.
It's bad. It's not a good movie. So I was pleased when the movie took a right turn into
Yes.
the weird, I'm going to drug you like we drugged Gene Hackman in The French Connection 2 subplot. So, I mean, I don't know. I think also when your villain is a villain, he can't be stupid. Jackie's stupid. I think that's one of the other things that's, he's very menacing. Yes. But he's also a complete idiot. So like it doesn't occur to him to search for any other electronics in the house. You've got to be kidding me. And then it doesn't occur to Kate to not use the iPad, because if the iPad and the iPhone are connected, then he's going to know you've been calling people from it. Kind of a big fucking plot hole there, Mayor of Easttown writer.
Or maybe because it was an Apple production, they had to. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, touche.
It's not like it was Claire's iPad, because they make a thing about, Mom, can I use your iPad?
Right.
So
and then they rewind and show us that again, which
Yeah.
drives me cuckoo bananas.
yeah. So, I mean, I did find this very watchable, just because I was like, I can't believe we were talking about the choices they make in Daryl over on our Patreon. And it's like the choices they make in this movie are insane. I mean, the whole idea that you would be able to find a body that you weighed down in the middle of the night in the lake, just because you saw the gases bubbling up from that Sydney Sweeney just happened to mention offhand 20 minutes earlier, Chekhov's gas bubbles. God, I got to use that for everything. Chekhov's dog, Chekhov's gun, Chekhov's gas bubbles. She finds the middle finger, on that's been spray painted on that rock. And so she knows this is the spot. Well, you didn't know that was the spot earlier, and you still saw the same fucking middle finger. What are you talking about? It's the middle of the goddamn night. You went to bed at 10 o'clock. So that was when Donald Gleason stopped watching you, and you've got until 2 o'clock to set the thing, and and he's a fucking tweaker. Do you really think he's going to bed? I mean, research your drug uses before you write them into your movie.
Wait, Dave, you had a horse quibble with this movie.
I do.
What's the horse quibble?
The horse quibble is when Julianne Moore is in the beginning openly grieving, and she's listening to all the voicemails from her wife who died in the accident. Her wife says on one of the messages, I'm going to be home a little late this morning. Would you take the horses out? No one says take the horses out. You turn the horses out. You turn them out. No horse person who was a serious horse person would ever say, nobody who owned a fucking barn and a ranch and gave lessons would say, take the horses out. In fact, most of those people would have them turned out all the time, even in the dead of winter, and you would only take them out, put them in the barn for feedings and cleanings, and when the weather was so super fucking shitty, you didn't know when it was going to pass. Otherwise, most horse people keep their horses turned out. Now, that being said, it is a barn where they stable other people's horses, and lots of times you will stable those horses overnight. You won't keep them turned out unless the owner specifically says, oh, you can keep my horse turned out, it's fine. Because all of those fields, all of those paddocks have run-ins for the horses to stand underneath if they get too hot or if it's raining or whatever. But horses don't really mind. Like, the horses are fucking weird. Horses do not mind any kind of weather.
Horses are weird.
I mean, if it's like freezing outside and a horse wants to take a drink, they'll go over to the water tub with like frozen 3 inches of ice on it, and they'll bang their hoof into it until they break enough ice so that they can drink the water underneath.
Cool.
Horses are not, in my
Yeah, it's pretty
opinion, the
amazing.
brightest of animals, but they are tough. So
You're like, I don't like them, but I respect them.
that's kind of true. They're not my favorites, but you know.
That is, but again, it comes back to those little touches that you were like, if you have a tweaker, you should do your drug research. If you have, if you're having a character who raises horses, you should do your horse research. So
Yeah.
absolutely, you should know what the terminology is.
Yeah, and it's like the thing with Jackie's character. It's like, all right, well, so he's the kind of, I wouldn't call him the brains of the operation. He's like a mid-level dealer, right? But he's also clearly a user because he looks
He
fucking
certainly gives
disheveled
off
as
that
fuck.
vibe, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Whether he's supposed to or not, he does.
The only thing that would make him look more tweakerish is if his eyes were blown open all the time. But that's hard for any actor to pull off unless it's like Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange, I guess. So, and he had a little help with those things. Anyway, yeah, it's just not a very effective character, I don't think. Not that you need some like big, gruff fucking dude, but I just didn't find him as menacing as you two did. So, also because the only other time I've heard him do an American accent, and I'm sure he's done others, was in, 2 times. The Revenant, where he's kind of an ineffectual leader. And then in the movie where they all want to fuck the android.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You're welcome.
And so those 2 characters kind of wimps. So I just didn't really buy him being the tough guy, I guess. And I like him. Most of the time I really like him, but
yeah,
here I was just kind of like, Jackie, one quick elbow to the face, and I'm pretty sure you'd be down for the count. So,
I mean, he was kicking the shit out of Claire, so
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean,
he's gross.
it was, yes, and to that point, but he like kind of sucker punched her. I don't think she knew what was coming, and then she was on the ground and he kept kicking her. That's all cheap stuff. Even a skinny motherfucker could get away with that.
I'm just saying he's giving off the creep menacing vibes. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. He's definitely a bad dude. I think that they just maybe could have made his character even more despicable than burn the horses.
The burning horses?
I think you gotta be more
No.
despicable. I think you gotta bring Claire and threaten to kill her too.
Like start
Claire
chopping fingers? Like
maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't want to see that.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not saying I want to see it. I'm saying that, it's just, now I know it wouldn't be as effective for the story if, Kate got a rolling pin and bashed him over the head, because then how are you going to
satisfying though?
It would have been satisfying, but then how are you going to frame him for the murder of the other kid?
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a million things she could have done in that house, I'm certain, to overpower him, if only because she knows the house and he doesn't. So
True.
There's the end of my
I
notes.
thought she was gonna poison his food, or maybe like when he drugged her, like I thought it would have been funny if she was like got up and was like, surprise motherfucker, I'm a former addict and I could totally hold my shit. Like that would have been really entertaining.
Yeah. Surprise motherfucker, Rue dies motherfucker. That meme. Anyway.
Well, okay, let's wrap up. Let's come in for a landing here. So It sounds like a very enthusiastic yes on Materialists.
Yes.
How are we feeling about Best Wishes to All, which is going to be on Shudder?
I'd recommend it. I like the vibes enough that I would recommend it.
It's definitely vibey. It has a vibe.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if I liked it enough to recommend, but it starts out really strong, I think. And then where do we land on Echo Valley?
I'm going to say no. I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's too unpleasant for me to watch and to recommend.
Yeah, I think just too many things in it are implausible to really get carried away with it. Get carried away with the story.
Yes. Implausible and unpleasant. That's our review for Echo Valley, which will be on Apple TV Plus. So if any of this unpleasantness sounded like it was up your alley, then you should watch it. But if not, if you're like us, probably not worth it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up our episode. I want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, Thank you so much for making it sound so great week after week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Otto.
Otto.
You can find us anywhere you get podcasts. You can also go to our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. We are on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on... Are we still on X, Twitter, whatever
Twitter,
it's called?
yes.
Yes.
I
We're
refuse to call it.
at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and we're on Threads and Blue Sky as well. If you want to get in touch with us about any of these movies or any other movies that you'd like to talk about in a spoilery fashion, you can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Yep. Leave us a voicemail, shoot us a text. We'd love to hear from you. And if you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. It'll take you to your platform of choice, and we really appreciate any ratings and reviews. It helps us gain cred in the podcast world. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. I mentioned at the top of the show. In our exclusive audio this week, we talk about the 1985 film Daryl, and we had a fun conversation, as we always do over on Patreon. And like I said, for $5 a month, you get access to those weekly bonus episodes, and you can vote in monthly polls. So yes, and I think that's everything. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
My name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Blue Sky and Twitter at OpinionSWorld, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm on the socials as Dave Sees Movies everywhere, except for Blue Sky, where I'm David M. Riedel, or David Riedel. I don't know. You figure it out. It's not like anybody is using any social media like that anymore the way they were when Twitter didn't suck. So, yeah, that's my happy thing to say.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks.
Bye.
Bye.